Okay, my apologies for the brief delay. And Patty, you are with us as making our fifth board member. Good to see everybody this morning. And to those of you in the public, thank you for joining us. We are now, I'm going to call now to order. My apologies for the brief delay. And Patty. Uh-oh, I got some echo. It looks like I'm playing back to myself, Brielle. Are we good? Okay. Okay, so I apologize, just some technical issues. I'll call the meeting to order, and can I please call on Councilmember Patty Cortez to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please, all other members, please mute yourselves, and if you are able, please rise.
Okay, please stand, put your hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we are now into the official business of the meeting. Brielle, can you please call the roll?
Yes, I can. Okay, Chair Liano.
Present.
Vice Chair Shevlin.
Here.
Director Andrade Stadler is absent. Okay, Director Boyer.
Here.
Director Cortez.
Here.
Director DeFrank.
Here.
Okay, and then Director Finley also had a conflicting meeting today, so she's not here today. Let me share my screen with the presentation.
Okay, and I think next on the agenda for us is public comment. Due to the ongoing health emergency, this meeting is being conducted by Zoom. In order to provide public comment, you can either do so by submitting it in writing, by emailing Brielle Acevedo at the Regional Housing Trust, or by calling in on the number listed on the agenda. Brielle, do we have anybody live or pre-submitted who wishes to give public comment on items not listed in the agenda?
We do not.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll call on the governing board members. Does any member of the governing board wish to reorder anything on the agenda? I don't see any hands raised, and I don't see anybody speaking up, so we'll go with the agenda as planned. Moving on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar consists of items 6 through 10. Do any of the governing board members wish to pull an item for discussion from the consent calendar? I'm looking in the chat function. I don't see any raised hands. I don't see anyone unmuting to speak up. Brielle, do we have any public comment on items 6 through 10 in the consent calendar?
We do not.
We have no public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to raise their hand on Zoom to give public comment for this?
I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, moving on. I'll take either discussion from the governing board or a motion to adopt items 6 through 10.
I'll make a motion. This is Shevlin Monrovia of items 6 through 10 for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Boyer.
I see a second from Boyer. Councilmember Cortez, you were right on the money. Okay, and can we take a roll call vote on the motion, please?
We can. Chair Liano?
Yes.
Vice Chair Shevlin?
Yes.
Director Boyer?
Yes.
Director Cortez?
Yes.
Director DeFrank?
Yes.
I'd also like to note that Director Andrade Stadler has joined us.
Yes.
Good to see you, and thank you for joining us. Wonderful to see you again. And the consent calendar passes. Items 6 through 10, unanimous vote. I'll move on to item number 11, Regional Housing Trust loan documents and signature authority. Staff, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so today on the agenda, we have loan documents for the trust, which were prepared by our consultant that helped us submit the local housing trust fund application to the state, Harrison Associates. We also have Dima on the line from Harrison Associates in the event that the directors have any questions. So the loan agreement or the loan documents that were drafted include a loan agreement, a deed of trust, promissory note, regulatory agreement, and assignment of contracts. These loan documents were based on affordable housing loan documents for multiple cities in California, including Los Angeles, Santa Monica, and Santa Ana. our legal counsel was able to review the loan document and provide some comments that will be incorporated. We also anticipate that the state or some of these senior lenders may have additional requirements that will be incorporated into the loan documents, but they're otherwise in really great draft form. And so the request is to authorize staff and the executive director to finalize these documents and for the executive director to be able to sign them and execute them to provide our commitment to funded projects.
Thank you, Brielle. I'll open the floor up to any governing board members with questions for staff. Any questions for staff? I don't see any raised hands. Oh, Mr. Boyer, please.
Yeah, actually, just going through it real quickly, the loan documents will be for, will those be used before a project is brought before the board, or will those be used after a project is approved and then before funds are distributed?
So these loan documents were specifically drafted with the 2 local housing trust fund projects in mind. So these would be executed at project closing for those documents.
Okay, yeah, that was my only question. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. I don't see any other hands.
Any other questions from the governing board to staff? I don't see any raised hands and no one else is unmuted, so I'll...
We do have a question from one of our attendees asking how long is the regulatory agreement term?
55 years, which is consistent with the local housing trust fund requirements.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Brielle, is there any public comment regarding this matter? Oh, I see a raised hand from board member Benita DeFrank, please.
Yes, I just wanted to know, have we heard back from the state as to when these will be moving forward with the actual award? What's the update on that?
We did not. They have been unable to provide an award date. However, they did give us a date of February 14th to either adopt their uniform multifamily regulations or have some additional changes to our loan guidelines. So that's why the uniform multifamily regulations were on the consent calendar. So I'm hopeful that that date is a good indication, but we will continue to follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Brielle, do we have any public comment either in writing or by telephone on this agenda item?
We do not.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the board for either questions, comments, or a motion on the action.
I'll make a motion to approve the loan documents as provided, and as I understand that there might be the possibility of some amendment to them as they're actually entered into. Is that correct?
Correct. We anticipate that legal counsel for our senior lenders or the state may have some recommendations. If there's anything major, we'll bring it back to the board, but assuming it's overall consistent, we'd like the executive director to be able to incorporate those changes.
Okay, well then, subject to those minor changes, then I make a motion to approve.
And is there a second?
Second.
I'll take a motion from Vice Chair Shevlin, second from Board Member Patty Cortez, and can we take a roll call vote, please?
Chair,
General
Yes.
Counsel.
Oh, I apologize.
Just to clarify, the requested action is to authorize the executive director to sign the loan document?
That's fine.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifications, David.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with the roll call vote, please.
Chair Liano,
Yes.
Vice Chair Shevlin,
Yes.
Director Andrade Sadler,
Yes.
Director Boyer,
Yes.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
and Director DeFrank.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. We're moving on now to item number 12, Emergency Shelter Pilot Program Budget. Staff, please.
Thank you. So we're happy to bring the pilot program back to you. At the November 2020 board meeting, the board directed staff to proceed with developing an emergency shelter pilot program, and staff worked to identify member cities that were interested in participating. We have a council action from the city of Montebello to indicate their participation. We also have interest from the city of Baldwin Park and believe they will participate, and also some initial interest from several other cities. So staff also connected with cities that have implemented this type of non-congregate or tiny home emergency shelter site, including Redondo Beach and Riverside, and we used their experience and some of their budget figures to help develop our program parameters and a sample budget. And I've provided an image here of an example of a non-congregate shelter. This example happens to be a pallet shelter. Okay, so for the program parameters, the trust will select 3 to 4 sites with 5 to 15 units per site. And the trust will provide capital funding for the shelters themselves, for restroom facilities, an office and case management space, and the necessary site preparation to allow non-congregate shelters on the site, which may include utility connections, lighting, ADA requirements. And the trust will also provide technical assistance to cities to bring these sites online, which would include coordinating utilities to the site, navigation of any zoning processes or requirements, any council actions, and the site configuration. While we were working with cities, we realized that some cities may wish to do this a little bit more on their own, using their in-house staff and their public works department. So included is an option to structure the program also as a reimbursable grant not to exceed $25,000 per unit. And then each site will have staff on site and will provide case and crisis management services to clients. Clients will be selected from the local area, and the idea is that the sites serve as interim housing while clients are connected to more permanent housing options. And while we're selecting sites, some of the criteria that we're looking at are sites that require limited or no grading, have existing utility and sewer connections. Both of those items really bring down the cost to deliver these sites. Access to existing restrooms, community rooms, or prep kitchens is also a bonus that can help reduce costs. Okay, so we put together a budget estimate. And so what you see before you are 3 potential site sizes. So in this example, we have a 10 shelter, a 12 shelter, and a 15 shelter model. This, of course, could change depending on our final selections. We could have 5, 15, 15, or any other combination of sites between 5 and 15. And the idea is that this would not exceed $835,000. So including the shelters themselves, all of the capital costs that the trust would cover. I have a hand from Becky. I don't think I can hear you.
Yes, I did want to ask, especially on the utilities, given the situation that Arcadia found themselves in when they did their resource hub on the utilities. I mean, it almost sunk the project before it even got started because of the utility challenges that they had. And I'm just wondering, obviously it's 40,000 across the board. So we are considering that we would fund up to 40,000 of that cost. But I just wondered if there may be just a little disclosure somewhere that is something that they really need to look into first to make sure that they've got the proper utility connections, given the problems that Arcadia had, just as a FYI.
Thank you. That's helpful. I'm not entirely sure if they had underground utility requirements or something that was a little.
No, it wasn't that, but in connecting with the sewer and electric, they just had some major issues in making the utility connections. And fortunately, they were able to work things out with the county, especially in the sewer connection. But that can be a real problem and should be looked at early on, so you don't. They were at the risk of using all their money to do the utility connections and almost stop the project.
And if I could jump in briefly, the major component there was really the stormwater, the sewer connection, especially for the showers. And that's obviously, I think that talking to Arcadia and also talking to some of our project managers on the east side that are working on similar types of projects, we've really flagged this as something of importance. And I think through those conversations, I think we, for the moment anyway, feel pretty comfortable with the budget we've set aside, even kind of considering those concerns that Arcadia ran into.
Yeah, we also have some contingency built in, so that will be helpful in the event that any cost comes in higher than what we had estimated. And the idea is that our construction management consultant will also be helping us to identify cost engineering opportunities wherever possible.
Right. I just thought I'd bring it up for FYI because it really, they were shocked at the dilemma they found themselves in, and they're very disappointed that it could have stopped the project.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, and then I also wanted to share where the trust is at in terms of capital funds, so you know how we can support the proposed budget. So we have 2 allocations of Measure H that need to be expended by the end of the calendar year for 2021, which we think that the emergency shelter program is a great use of those funds. We also are proposing to use a portion of our permanent local housing allocation funds towards this program, which would bring us to our $835,000. And I wanted to provide the balance of PLHA for you, so you would know that an almost equal amount would be available for matching funds in the event that we apply to the state again, or use these funds otherwise towards typical affordable housing projects. And another reason to spend our PLHA funds sooner rather than later is to make sure we don't run into a situation where if a city hasn't expended a proportion of its PLHA funds, it might not be eligible to get a new allocation. Okay, so for next steps, we'll be working to identify additional interested cities and sites. The RFP for these shelters was released and is due on the 8th. And so we are asking for authorization for the executive director to execute contracts with the selected vendors. We will be releasing an RFP for the construction management consultant in mid-February, and we do not anticipate that to be more expensive than the executive director's authority level. We will be working with cities to pass council actions and execute agreements to bring these sites. And we will also be requesting operational and capital funds from the county. So because we had such a positive response to this program, we are definitely anticipating that there will be interest from more than 3 cities. And in that event, we are asking the county for additional capital to be able to increase our capacity and serve additional sites. So that fund request letter was also included in the agenda packet. And then I included a breakdown here to show the capital costs that would be covered by the trust and the operating costs that we will be requesting from LA County. We have a meeting with the county next week. And that concludes my presentation, so I'll open it up for any questions.
Any questions from the governing board? Becky, I see on the participant list that your hand is still raised. Is that from the prior question?
That was a prior, but I do have a question in that these are monies that have to be expended by the end of the year. Obviously, these are projects, the pallet shelters. You would want them to continue on if you're making that big of an investment to go further than that. So do we have an idea once we get these tiny shelters up and going, where they might go after the 31st? I mean, the end of the year?
Yeah, so since our funds are being used for capital, that wouldn't be the concern so much as securing ongoing operational costs in the county to make sure that we could continue supporting the sites moving forward.
Okay, great.
Any other questions from the governing board?
Yeah,
Mr. Boyer, please.
In asking the county, we're asking for up to an additional $2 million. Is there an expectation that if we're spending $835,000 for 3 sites, and then we're talking about asking for an additional $2 million to allow us to move up to 10 sites, I'm just wondering if we're going to be able to do that with $2 million. Are we promising more than we're going to be able to fulfill?
I don't think so. The idea was that it costs about $250,000 per site.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, that was my only question. The numbers didn't seem to add up, but if we can get it, it'll be great. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions from the governing board for staff? Councilmember Andrade Stadler.
Yes, I have a question about and maybe this is a question for Councilwoman Shevlin. The Arcadia site, where did they place them when they had the problem? But I care more about where their placement of
It wasn't a tiny home or pallet shelter. It's a resource hub, and it is conducted on Thursdays each week until I think the program goes through, at least it's funded through May. So there are no living facilities actually constructed there. It's purely a resource hub.
I see. Sort of like, is it the church in South Pasadena sort of does the same thing? Holy Family, I know has programs where they bring showers in and they do
Right.
all the, okay.
Right.
So is that similar to that?
Right, it's portable
Okay.
showers and also the laundry facilities, and then they have resources from Union Station. They've got paramedics that come, they serve lunch that day, but it goes, I think, from 9 to 3 on Thursdays. So, but there are no overnight, there are no living arrangements there or facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the governing board for staff? I'm looking. I don't see any other governing board questions. Do we have any public comment on this item, Brielle?
We do not.
Does anybody from the attendees have their hand raised or wish to give public comment?
I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, very good. So I'll bring it back to the governing board for comments or action on the item. Are there any comments or a motion on this item?
I'll make a quick comment, but I just want to thank staff for putting this together, because I think this is it's going to be a really useful tool for some cities that don't have the resources to kind of do something on their own. And I think this is going to be a worthwhile program. So thank you to them. And with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Wonderful. We have a motion from Councilmember Cortez. Do I have a second?
I'll second Shevlin.
Second from Vice Chair Shevlin. Can I please have a roll call vote?
Chair Liano,
Yes.
Vice Chair Shevlin,
Yes.
Director Andrade Stadler,
Yes.
Director Boyer,
Yes.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
and Director DeFrank.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you again to staff and everybody who put in so much work to make that happen. We're now on to item number 13, presentation on strategic plan funding strategy and housing needs assessment presentation by BAE Urban Economics, Sadler and Associates. Okay.
Great. I'm going to turn it over to our consultant team.
Terrific. Thank you so much for having us today, and good morning. My name is Lisa Barron. I am the Vice President at BAE Urban Economics, and I'm here today with Sadler and Associates and the Future organization. I'm having some feedback. Are you guys able to hear me?
Can hear you just fine. There's a little feedback, but frankly, it's minimal. So.
Okay, great. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to work with you on your strategic planning, your housing needs assessment, and your funding and fundraising plan. We're excited to work with you. We're already taking a deep dive in a lot of parts of this project, and we're here today to really get some input from the board at this early stage. Next slide. So I'm here to provide just an introduction to our team, and we have some pictures here so you can see everybody's faces. Matt Cote, our managing principal, unfortunately had a conflict and is unable to join us today. And as I mentioned, I'm Lisa Barron, and we have 3 firms working on this project. Sadler and Associates is the lead for strategic planning. BAE is the prime, and we're the lead on the housing needs assessment and the public funding and the gap analysis and demand analysis. And the Future organization is the lead on private philanthropy, fundraising and taking a look at those opportunities. I just want to take a minute to let Layla from the Future Organization and Elizabeth from Sadlon and Associates to introduce themselves.
Hi there. It's nice to meet everybody. Thank you for having us. I just wanted to give a little bit of background on the Future Organization and what we'll be doing on this project. We are a research, program development, change management organization. So we'll be doing an extensive environmental scan in order to form our fund development strategy, and then from there building a toolkit to help facilitate the pursuit of those resources in alignment with the strategic plan. Elizabeth?
Sorry about that. Great to see everybody. I'm Elizabeth Sadlon, and I work with my colleague C. Reed, who will be conducting stakeholder interviews that we are preparing for now. I've had the pleasure of beginning conversations with some of the board leadership and staff, and we'll be working on guiding the strategic planning and integration of data in a really practical, actionable way to be able to create the roadmap forward for the trust.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. And BAE Urban Economics, we're an urban planning economics firm. We work anywhere where land use and urban planning kind of come together. We have a particular focus and interest and passion about affordable housing. I myself spent 10 years at the city of Santa Monica in their housing division primarily. So I know also what it's like to be at a local jurisdiction for affordable housing. And our team includes Matt Ferris, who's our senior associate, and he's leading the housing needs assessment. He's worked throughout the state of California and actually grew up in Claremont, so has a personal interest in the project. Denim Ami is our senior analyst working on best practices and our funding, research, public funding. Luckily, we have a lot of resources from other projects we've done recently to draw into our work, and Nini Vu is going to be working on a lot of our mapping, our census, our ACS data, and really supporting Matt as we take a look at the region of San Gabriel Valley. So at this point, after just introducing our team, we're going to go to the next slide. And just talking about big picture here, we realize that you're a new launch organization, but you've already done so much given the amount of time that you've been working. And that really is kudos to you and your staff team. Our job is to help you and support you in identifying the specific and unique needs and resources available to the trust as it seeks to have an impact, to build the framework and tools to achieve the vision. And we have a real focus on implementation and making things happen on our team. We want to bring you tools to make decisions in the strategic planning process, not just kind of philosophically understanding what you need to do, because it seems like you have a really good handle on that, but really just kind of some toolkits and some decision making to move forward as effectively as possible. And we want to support building more units in the San Gabriel Valley and figuring out where the needs are going to be and are today. And also building a process that has momentum and support. And as a regional housing trust, you're kind of an unusual beast and not an organization that exists a lot out there. So in some ways, you are leaving a legacy, not just for your region, but potentially for other regions that might want to do something collectively that leverages resources and looks at needs in a bigger picture. So I'm going to hand this over to Elizabeth to talk about strategic planning.
Fabulous. Thanks, Lisa. So we want to give you a bit of an overview of how all of the different pieces will be coming together over time. And you'll see to the right where we have 3 major phases that we're working in an integrated way across the team. We're in the input collection phase now that goes from now through April. Then we'll move into the strategy integration phase and then end up with that focus on the practical implementation and tools. As we start in the top left corner, you'll see the input that we're in the process of both gathering and designing right now includes a series of stakeholder interviews that'll actually happen in various stages of the process, so that we are targeting our conversations with your external stakeholders, as well as gathering input from your members at the right point in time, and can build on the right questions and gather the input that's most useful. The best practices review, where we're looking at what are the lessons that we can learn from other trusts, and looking at 5 case studies there, and I lost the visual, there we go, beautiful. In that best practices review, being able to gather information, learning from others, but also recognizing how this trust and your region, our region, is unique, and being able to recognize where we can learn lessons and take innovative ideas, and where we're creating those that are specific to ourselves. The housing needs assessment, as Lisa mentioned, will provide incredible data that is focused and tailored and designed in a way that we're getting guidance already from the staff in how to structure that, so that it's not only useful during the planning process itself, it's also a set of tools and information that you can use for decision making going forward. Those pieces will come to integrate with key information on funding strategy. And we know this is really essential for the work that we're doing together, recognizing not only the public funding sources, but where are those private opportunities to be able to leverage other funds, access, and partner in order to advance the purposes of the trust and increase the production of units. The funding strategy pieces that Layla spoke about come in various, this is iterative throughout the process, so we'll both be gathering information that will then come together with the input phase into the program recommendations, and then also we'll circle back to those fundraising questions and opportunities to develop those toolkits. So you see visually how all of these parts come together into the strategic plan, which really sets a very practical roadmap and set of goals against which the trust will be able to measure your progress and use as a set of agreements that will then inform your decision-making going forward. We find that it's very helpful not only to be able to lay out that path, but also to build the agreement so that when new opportunities arise, you can respond to them quickly because you have already built the agreement and thought about where do we want to focus, what do we understand about our communities and what our member jurisdictions want to make happen and how to do that together. You'll see in the blue implementation phase is where Lisa was talking about those practical toolkits. So before we go to talk about the board touch points, I want to pause here and see, are there any questions on what we've laid out, anything that you want to flag or pin for further information that we could share at another time or separately? Seeing none, why don't we go on to the next slide. And just wanted to give you a sense as board members, the governing board will have touch points in each of those 3 phases. So we are here together today to be able to connect with you and the process. And you will all be, of course, included in the member survey that we'll be doing an electronic survey to be able to gather data in an efficient way that really focuses on what our members looking for, as well as giving us information on what is happening in each of the jurisdictions and opportunities, for example, for cross-jurisdiction or partnering that is happening or could be happening in, say, neighboring communities. When we move into the strategy phase, we are imagining it would be useful with all of that input and information that's being gathered to offer optional data briefings where you would have the opportunity to be able to see and hear and engage with the data that we will present and provide in a way that you can interface with, but also know that there's a lot of background context that can be used, that the staff will be able to use on an ongoing basis. But we want you to be able to see the content that comes together so that when we gather for a retreat, which we're imagining would happen in May, we can really have a shared understanding of where we are and have generative conversations about setting those goals and that roadmap that will lead you through the following years. And based on the calendar of your quarterly board meetings now, August is the time when we'd be able to come back for implementation. Any thoughts or questions, requests, or suggestions about the board involvement and touch points? Okay, super. Seeing none, why don't we go on to the last slide, is where we're going to be able to hear a little bit from you about knowing that all of this information is coming together. Information about the pipelines, the needs assessment, the case studies, the best practices, input from a variety of different sources and stakeholders as we narrow in and focus on those concrete goals and develop and articulate the roadmap going forward. What would be helpful is, this is our point in time to connect with you, to be able to hear what's most important to you as we're sorting and sifting that information, to be able to rise up and emphasize as we're advancing your goals. So Brielle has a poll that we're going to test this method to see, when you think about all of this data that we've been collected, what would be among these possibilities most important to you in setting the trust's goals. And some of these you can see, we are recognizing, just as the example that we just saw with the shelter program, is that there are times that your investments are specifically for production, and that the technical assistance and other kinds of ways that the trust can really advance closing the affordable housing gap in the region can come to play. Which of these factors, or maybe others, would be important to you? We'd encourage you to select up to 3. And on my screen, yep, they're all there. And if there are others that don't show up here that you think are really important, you could pop that into the chat, because we would love to see and hear that. So for the governing board members, give me a thumbs up if you're able to be clicking into that poll. Is it working for anyone? Excellent, thanks, Deb. Chair Leano, to be proper there. Brielle, are you seeing responses coming in?
I see 7 responses so far. So if anyone's looking for this, you can go.
That's all of us, right? I think we have 7 board members on the call.
True.
Yeah, everyone
There
responded. Good.
So I think then we move into the place where we post the results, and then we should all be able to see those. Ta-da, okay. So we see that meeting local needs really rises to the top, along and balanced with total cost and financial sustainability. I would welcome any thoughts or reflections that you had as you thought about which of these rise to the top for you, others or other ways that you might kind of drill into any of these different characteristics. Anything that you'd like to speak to on this?
I'll just chime in that it was a hard decision. They're all good.
Yeah, right,
they're all good.
right.
They're all good priorities. But if you had to pick 3, ironically, I think my 3 were not among the top other 3. But then when I see the poll, I totally agree with it. So share that.
I appreciate that.
The one thing I noticed, is it's obvious everybody is concerned about cost, but part of the reason for that is if we can control the cost, we can do more good. Unfortunately, in this situation, we're seeing a lot of money that's not being used in a way that it should be. And those are people that are not getting help. So I think a lot of the reason that, for me, noting the cost is simply the fact that if we keep an eye on that, we'll be able to do more good in the long run.
Excellent context. Thank you. Vice Chair Cheverly?
Yeah, yes. And we had obviously, we had talked earlier, and this is something new, obviously, for the COG to, and this JPA to go forward, but it's all about, we need to finally have results and be able to show something that we're actually doing something more than just plan for units. And so I emphasized the need. Obviously, all these areas are very, very important, but at the end of the day, it's, are we going to be able to actually now deliver something and get it done? One of my ones that I had voted for was speed. And so I think we're all a little frustrated because for years and years, there's a lot of talk of, we plan and plan and plan, but we don't actually, we're never able to actually pull the trigger and show results. So that was one of the areas that I thought was important going on. I mean, as we have success, I mean, that'll be great, but I'm very anxious, as we talked about, have we heard yet on the whether or not we've been awarded these monies, the monies for grant applications, and it's just frustrating. Want to know that we're able to actually deliver.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Director Andrade Statler?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
So my choices, and I only did 2 because I did it so quickly. I should have.
Oh, you can let us know. We can add it in. Yeah.
I see where I should have could have participated on a grander scale, I guess. But my first one was equity, which was, I think, 20% or something. And the reason I say that is because I think this is crucial in the beginning of the input phase, right? Getting all the information that you potentially can, be it GPS and looking at all our cities and where there's sites and all that other kind of good stuff. You know, it's about equity and, you know, and making sure that each city, which is obviously impacted by all of this, that it's equal, and that definitely that our local needs are first and foremost, of course, but equity would be very important for me. Thank you.
Very much appreciate that. Yeah, it's a great, both you and Chair Liano's mentioned that even though one of the characteristics may not have received the highest number or greatest percentage, there are important ways to incorporate these characteristics and considerations into the work going forward. And so they could be a filter throughout. So, you know, equity might be something that is considered throughout, as you said, the design phase, but also the prioritization process. Really helpful. Any other thoughts, interpretations, additional considerations that we should be holding as we move forward? Director Lopez, yes, please.
Yeah, just really quick. So I agree with all the comments that have been made about, you know, equity and cost, especially because I think Chairman Boyer is correct, is that, or Councilmember Boyer, is that, you know, a lot of times we see funds that aren't utilized or going towards projects that will actually bring results. And I think that lends to other comments that have been made about, we actually want to see tangible results at this time because there is that frustration. And I also think for, you know, I don't think I marked it, but, you know, in looking at them again, like having more time to think about all of them, you know, I also think about local support because, you know, it's one thing for as council members for us to approve these projects and know that we have to do them, but it's also the support of having the outreach materials to go out and to educate our residents that, you know, the need for it. And I think most of them understand, but it's also educating them as to what's going to take place in these facilities. You know, that they are going to be provided with the services. There are, you know, there is going to be, you know, some type of structure in there for these individuals. So I just think that we need to kind of give a little bit of attention to that so that we do have those materials available for those communities that will be having some of these projects.
Very helpful. That's really a great goal to go for. Chair Liano, could we take a couple of more minutes to hear from Member DeFrank?
Please.
Great.
Hello. Hi, I just, one of the things that I'm just really aware of these days is that we are, all the cities within this area are heading into a housing element
Mhm.
phase. And I think that part, as our cities have to do community outreach, and that there's a shared opportunity here to not only educate the communities about the Regional Housing Trust Fund and maybe how the housing trust could work in concert with communities to develop affordable housing, but also that we get input as part of that process that can be shared with this strategy. Because again, this is a unique opportunity that we won't have again for another 8 years. And the fact that these are going on simultaneously, I'd like to see if there's a way to capture all the information that we're going to be gathering and make sure that it's reflected mutually as we go through the process.
I really appreciate that. And we can work further together on how to make that happen and make those connections. We definitely want to use that information. So grateful for the time in our meeting together today. Lisa, anything else in closing?
I do want to say that the point about the housing elements happening concurrently is valuable to know. And we are also taking a look at our housing needs assessment, filling in some gaps that might not be found, and looking at the housing needs assessment differently than the individual housing elements, knowing that they're going to be working in depth at their local levels. So we're excited about that opportunity and looking at exploring a little bit more about what how our work and that housing element work comes together in terms of the direction of the trust.
Okay, I want to thank all of the presenters today. That was really informative and interactive. And again, thank you for that. I'll move on to discussion items. Let me start with staff. Are there any update items?
Nope, not on my end.
Okay, do we have anything from legal counsel?
Nothing today, Chair Leano.
Do we have anything from our executive director?
I believe Marissa had to drop off to attend the city manager's meeting.
I have no other comments, so I just want to thank everyone for this meeting. 49 minutes. I think we're doing pretty good at efficiency. Got a lot done today. Hope everyone stays safe out there, and I'll see you next month. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Jed.
Thank you.